What's the location of your emergency?
I went to 14. I don't know what happened. My wife is dead.
What?
My daughter tried to shoot me.
Your daughter tried to shoot you?
Yeah. She ran out shooting at me.
They say evil has no age limit. But what if a teenager, barely old enough for high school, walked into her own home, pulled out a gun, and killed her mother? What if she then lured her stepfather to his death, all while texting friends casually, acting normally, as if nothing had happened? This isn't fiction. This is Carly Gregg. Stay until the end to understand the twisted motives, the defense claims of silence and hallucinations, and the verdict that shocked Mississippi. Before we begin, subscribe to Crime Vault, because the darkest stories demand to be seen. On March 19, 2024, in Brandon, Mississippi, the Gregg household became the stage for a chilling attack. Carly Madison Gregg, 14 years old at the time, lived with her mother, Ashley Smiley, a high school math teacher, and stepfather, Heath Smiley. That day, months of tension would collide with tragedy. According to prosecutors, when Ashley Smiley returned home, she allegedly confronted Carly about vaping devices and burner phones discovered in her room. Surveillance video showed Carly retrieving a .357 Magnum handgun from beneath the mattress in her parents' bedroom, concealing it behind her back. Moments later, the gunshots rang out. Ashley Smiley was struck, apparently in the face. Carly then used her mother's phone to text Heath Smiley, "When will you be home, honey?" to lure him back when Heath arrived. Carly allegedly tried to shoot him in the shoulder. He survived. Amid that violence, Carly reportedly invited a friend over to see a dead body. The house was laden with chaos and contradiction. She shot her own mother, tried to ambush her stepfather, and yet after the act, appeared calm or detached. Video captured Carly walking with the gun hidden, texting, acting nearly composed. How could a teenager execute such violence, so precisely yet so emotionally detached? In the next section, we'll examine Carly's background, her mental state, and what lay hidden beneath the surface. To understand Carly Gregg, we must look beyond the gunshots and into what drove her there. She attended the same high school where her mother taught. Neighbors said she sometimes seemed moody, distant, and frustrated by parental control. Her defense would later argue she was in a mental health crisis, perhaps exacerbated by medications, auditory hallucinations, mood disorders, and memory gaps. In pre-trial hearings, a psychologist testified she was competent to stand trial, but noted that medications prescribed before the shooting may have influenced her state. The defense claimed she had blacked out during the act and couldn't recall pulling the trigger. Prosecutors countered that her actions weren't consistent with accident or dissociation. They were deliberate, controlled. One psychiatrist called parts of her act diabolical, arguing they didn't align with psychotic breaks, but with cold planning. What's clear is Carly's case became as much about mental health and responsibility as it was about murder. The stage was set for a courtroom battle where evidence, mental state, and motive would clash. Next, we'll enter the trial. The 911 call, the surveillance footage, the expert duels, and see how her own texts became her undoing. Opening day in Rankin County, Mississippi. The public and media swarmed. The prosecution delivered their version. This wasn't a crime of passion, but one of cold precision. Carly paced behind her mother's bedroom door, gun concealed, then stepped forward and fired 3 shots. Surveillance video caught her pacing before the killing. Then she walked away, texting. Prosecutors played the 911 call made by Heath Smiley, pleading that his wife had been shot, demanding police. They also pointed to the security camera footage and interior home surveillance that captured portions of the incident. Defense focused on Carly's mental state. They presented psychiatrists who testified she experienced depression, auditory hallucinations, dissociation, and memory gaps. They argued she was not fully sound of mind at the moment, but other expert witnesses contradicted them, saying her actions before, during, and after the shooting showed planning, not panic or confusion. After 5 days of testimony, the jury deliberated less than 2 hours. The verdict: Carly Gregg was found guilty on all counts: first-degree murder, attempted murder, and tampering with evidence. During sentencing, the judge delivered life in prison without parole for both the murder and attempted murder, plus an additional 10 years for tampering. When the verdict fell, Carly wept. Her defense attorneys pledged to appeal. But the story didn't end in the courtroom. Carly's attorneys have since filed for a new trial, pointing to new evidence and allegations of trial error. You've been watching Crime Vault because every crime has a story, and every story has a hidden truth.
That she walks straight to her parents' bedroom, that she goes straight to her mom's side of the bed and removes a .357 Magnum from under the mattress. She peeks her head around the kitchen to make sure that her mom hasn't come out of her bedroom. She walked with that .357 Magnum behind her back, walked in to her own bedroom, fired 3 shots into her mother.
Just moments.
It was the kind of small town where people didn't lock their doors. Alba, Texas, population barely 500. A place where the church steeple still marked the heart of the community, and everyone knew each other's names. But in March of 2008, this quiet town became the setting for one of the most brutal family murders in American history, committed not by a stranger, but orchestrated by a 16-year-old girl named Erin Caffey. This wasn't just another teenage rebellion. It was darker, more chilling, a story of manipulation, control, and the kind of violence no one ever imagined could come from a pastor's daughter. The night began like any other inside the Caffey home. The family of 5, Terry and Penny Caffey, and their 3 children, were asleep. Terry, a man of faith, had worked hard to provide stability. Penny, his wife, was a devoted mother and choir singer. Their youngest, Tyler, was 8. Their middle son, Matthew, was 13. Erin, the oldest, was 16. By all appearances, they were the picture of a wholesome, church-going family. But appearances can be deceptive. Just after 2 a.m. on March 1st, 2008, the stillness of the Texas night was broken. The Caffey home was suddenly engulfed in chaos. Masked intruders burst in with guns and knives. Terry awoke to gunfire. Penny screamed. The boys never had a chance. Within minutes, the family's safe haven was turned into a slaughterhouse. Terry was shot multiple times, left for dead. Penny was executed. The boys, Tyler and Matthew, were brutally murdered in their bedrooms. And then the attackers set the house ablaze. By the time the fire was discovered, the home was reduced to smoldering ash. Only one person miraculously survived, Terry Caffey. Crawling out of the inferno, bleeding from multiple gunshot wounds, he staggered through the woods for 300 yards until he reached a neighbor's house. Gasping for air, drenched in blood, he whispered words that would shock investigators. "My house, my family, they're all gone." At first, police assumed it was a random home invasion, a robbery gone wrong. But what Terry told them changed everything. He identified one of the attackers, and within hours, the truth unraveled. The mastermind wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a burglar. It was his own daughter, Erin. And the motive? Something so petty, so incomprehensible, it left investigators speechless. Why would a pastor's daughter, raised in faith, music, and community, want her entire family dead? The answer lies in a dark teenage romance and a spiral of manipulation that would stun the nation. To neighbors and church members, Erin Caffey was the kind of girl who drew smiles wherever she went. Blonde hair, bright eyes, a voice that carried through the church choir. She was raised in a home centered around faith, love, and music. Terry, her father, was a preacher who worked part-time in the community. Penny, her mother, was equally devoted, balancing family life with church duties. The Caffeys had strict rules, but they weren't cruel parents. They believed in discipline, curfews, and keeping Erin close to family. In many ways, it was the kind of small-town upbringing parents dream of for their children. But like many teenagers, Erin wanted more freedom than her parents were willing to give. When she was 15, Erin met Charlie Wilkinson. He was a year older, 17, and by all accounts, charming but reckless. He smoked, partied, and lived on the edge. To Erin, he wasn't just a boyfriend. He was freedom, independence, rebellion wrapped in affection. Terry and Penny saw the danger immediately. Charlie was nothing like the young men they imagined for their daughter. They tried to keep Erin away from him, grounding her, limiting phone use, and setting strict rules about seeing him. But Erin was determined. She snuck calls. She snuck out. She fought with her parents constantly, her once bright and respectful demeanor shifting into defiance. In her diary and text to friends, she wrote about feeling trapped. To her, every rule felt like a prison wall. The relationship quickly became obsessive. Charlie fed Erin promises of a life without rules, without restrictions. He told her he loved her unconditionally. He said they could run away together, start fresh, live on their own. But when Penny and Terry discovered just how serious things were, they banned Erin from seeing him altogether. That's when the teenage fantasy turned into a dangerous obsession. In late February 2008, Erin began telling Charlie something chilling. She claimed her parents were ruining her life, destroying their love. She said she couldn't take it anymore. And in the twisted logic of two impulsive teenagers, the unthinkable began to sound like a solution. If her parents were out of the way, nothing could stop them from being together. What began as whispers between two young lovers soon escalated into a plot so brutal, so unrelenting, that it would leave a family destroyed and a small town forever haunted. And Erin wasn't alone, because Charlie wasn't planning to come to the Caffey house by himself. In the quiet of Rains County, Texas, no one could have imagined the storm brewing inside Erin Caffey's world. Behind closed doors, Text messages between Aaron and Charlie grew darker. They weren't just venting teenage frustrations anymore. They were sketching out a plan. Charlie Wilkinson wasn't going to do this alone. He brought in his best friend, Charles Wade, who was 19. Wade had a reputation for being aimless, drifting between odd jobs, drugs, and trouble. Alongside him was Wade's girlfriend, Bobby Gale Johnson, just 18 years old. Together, this trio became the machinery behind Aaron's whispered wish. Aaron, frustrated and angry, began hinting more directly, "I want them gone." She told Charlie her parents stood in the way of their love. And Charlie, obsessive, impulsive, willing to prove himself, took her words literally. By early March 2008, the plan was taking shape. Aaron's family home would become the crime scene. Her parents and little brothers, Matthew and Tyler, were to be eliminated. In Aaron's mind, this would free her from the prison of rules and restrictions. But here's where things turned from reckless to horrifying. Aaron not only agreed to the plan, she encouraged it. In fact, prosecutors would later reveal she was the one who demanded it happen. On the night of March 1st, 2008, Charlie, Wade, and Bobby armed themselves. They carried guns, knives, and a jug of gasoline. Aaron, the so-called innocent preacher's daughter, waited outside in the getaway car. At around 2 a.m., they arrived at the Caffey family home. The small, modest house sat in the woods, surrounded by trees. It was a kind of place where families felt safe, where doors weren't always locked, and nights were silent except for crickets. But on that night, silence would be replaced with screams. Charlie and Wade slipped inside while Bobby stayed back. They moved quietly, knives ready, hearts pounding. Their first target was Penny Caffey, Aaron's mother. She awoke in terror as the intruders stormed into her bedroom. She begged for her life, but the attack was merciless. Nearby, Aaron's father, Terry, was jolted awake by the sounds. In the chaos, he too was attacked, stabbed multiple times, left bleeding on the floor. Charlie and Wade thought he was dead, but Terry wasn't. Crawling, bloodied, and barely conscious, he managed to drag himself outside. From there, he would attempt something unimaginable: to survive long enough to tell the world who had done this. While Terry clung to life inside the house, Aaron's two younger brothers, Matthew and Tyler, were next. Innocent, defenseless, still children, and the attackers weren't finished. What happened in those next few minutes would devastate the Caffey family beyond repair and expose Aaron's true role in a crime that shocked America. Inside the quiet Texas home, after Penny and Terry were struck down, the intruders turned toward the children. Matthew, just 13, and Tyler, only 8 years old, were asleep in their shared bedroom. Two boys who had done nothing but loved their big sister, Aaron. Charlie Wilkinson and Charles Wade crept into their room. What followed was brutal. Both boys were stabbed repeatedly as they slept, never given a chance to fight back, never able to understand why the people who walked into their room wanted them gone. Their lives were extinguished in an instant, all because their sister wanted freedom. But the attackers weren't finished. After believing they had killed everyone in the home, Charlie and Wade doused the house in gasoline. Flames erupted, swallowing everything the Caffeys had built. The small wooden home became an inferno in minutes, glowing orange against the dark forest night. Outside, Aaron waited in the getaway car, close enough to smell the smoke. Later, She would claim she hadn't expected things to go this far, that she only wanted her parents scared. But the reality was undeniable. She sat outside while her family was murdered inside. As the fire spread, a miracle was unfolding. Terry Caffey, stabbed more than a dozen times, bleeding heavily, crawled through the woods, dragging his broken body over 300 yards to a neighbor's house. Every movement was agony, but his determination was unshakable. He had to survive, for Penny, for Matthew, for Tyler. By the time firefighters arrived, the home was engulfed. The remains of Penny, Matthew, and Tyler were found inside. Forensic teams later confirmed what the fire tried to hide. The boys had been stabbed to death before the blaze consumed them. The community of Alba, Texas, awoke to the horrifying news. A pastor's family, once seen as pillars of faith and love, had been shattered overnight. Whispers spread quickly. Who could have done this? Was it a robbery gone wrong? The answer was more chilling than anyone could imagine. Because as Terry fought for his life in the hospital, detectives began piecing together the puzzle. And the thread of evidence led not to strangers, but to someone much closer. Within hours, investigators had their first shocking lead. A name surfaced, a name no one in Alba wanted to believe could be connected. That name was Erin Caffey, the girl who sang in church, who smiled sweetly at neighbors, who was supposed to be the innocent victim of a family tragedy. Now, she was their prime suspect. When news first broke of the massacre, the community in Alba, Texas, was shattered. Friends, neighbors, and fellow church members gathered in shock, offering prayers and casseroles to a family that had lost nearly everything overnight. For many, it felt unthinkable that anyone could target the Caffeys, quiet, faithful people who had devoted their lives to God. But as investigators sifted through the wreckage, one survivor remained at the center, Terry Caffey. His condition was critical. He had been stabbed more than a dozen times, his lungs collapsing, blood pooling from deep wounds in his chest and arms. Doctors worked tirelessly to keep him alive. He should not have survived, and yet, against all odds, he clung to life. From his hospital bed, Terry whispered the first pieces of information detectives desperately needed. Through a haze of pain, he told them, it was Charlie Wilkinson. That single name flipped the investigation upside down. Charlie wasn't a stranger. He wasn't a drifter or a burglar. He was Erin's boyfriend. The moment Charlie's name surfaced, suspicion shifted. Detectives began asking questions about Erin, where she had been that night, what she knew, and whether she had any involvement. At first, some refused to believe it. Erin? The sweet blonde, 16-year-old who played flute in the school band, who grew up in the pews of a small-town church. Surely not. But evidence painted a darker picture. Friends came forward with chilling stories. Erin had been complaining for weeks about her parents, furious that they disapproved of her relationship with Charlie. Text messages revealed angry exchanges, hints of running away, and even veiled threats about her parents not letting her live her life. Detectives tracked down Charlie Wilkinson within hours. When confronted, he cracked. The details spilled out in fragments about Erin's anger, about her wish to be free from her parents' control, about the night's plan that spiraled into bloodshed. And then came the most damning piece of evidence. Charlie claimed the murders had not been his idea alone. According to him, Erin had asked for it. Police soon brought Erin in for questioning. At first, she played the role of the devastated daughter, crying, insisting she had no idea what had happened. But detectives had heard this before, and they pressed harder. Piece by piece, her story unraveled. What began as a tale of innocence shifted into something far darker. Witnesses confirmed she had spoken about wanting her parents gone. Charlie's confession matched with the sequence of events at the cafe home. Aaron had sat in the getaway car, aware of what was happening inside. The pastor's daughter wasn't just a bystander. According to prosecutors, she was the spark. As the interrogation room door closed, detectives leaned forward with the question that would decide Aaron's fate. Did you ask them to kill your family? Her answer would shock everyone, even those who thought they already knew the truth. The air in the interrogation room was heavy. Erin sat hunched, her blonde hair falling into her face, tears streaking her cheeks. For hours, she denied any involvement, clutching at her innocence like a shield. But detectives knew that behind the sobs and trembling hands lay the truth. Then came the breaking point. When asked again if she had asked Charlie and his friends to kill her family, Erin hesitated. Her voice cracked and she whispered, "I just wanted them gone. I didn't think it would really happen." That single sentence collapsed her story. Detectives seized on it. "Erin, are you saying you told Charlie you wanted your parents dead?" She nodded slightly, murmuring through tears, "I thought we'd just run away. I didn't think." Her words trailed off. But by then, it was too late. Charlie Wilkinson's statement matched hers. Erin had been the one to plant the seed. Her parents' disapproval of the relationship had grown into resentment. She told Charlie that her mother was ruining her life. She claimed her father was too controlling. According to Charlie, Erin gave him an ultimatum. If he loved her, he'd prove it. So Charlie, blinded by teenage obsession, took her words as a command. He recruited two friends, Charles Wade and Bobby Gale Johnson. Together, they armed themselves with guns and knives, and in the dead of night, carried out Erin's fantasy. When confronted with this, Erin broke down again, insisting she never meant for anyone to die. But detectives, hardened by years of hearing excuses, didn't buy it. The evidence was clear: text messages, friends' testimonies, and Charlie's confession tied Erin directly to the plot. By the time the interrogation ended, the once innocent pastor's daughter had transformed in the eyes of investigators, from victim to mastermind. As the case reached the courthouse, the community of Alba was torn apart. Half the town clung to the image of Erin as a sweet, misguided child led astray by an older boyfriend. The other half saw her as a cold-blooded manipulator who used love as a weapon. The courtroom became a battlefield of psychology, faith, and betrayal. Prosecutors painted Erin as the puppet master. The defense tried to argue she was a naive teenager manipulated by Charlie's obsession. Witnesses described Erin as smiling in the days before the murders, unfazed, almost relieved. Then came Terry Caffey, her father. The man who had survived 13 stab wounds, crawled 300 yards through blood and mud to his neighbor's house, and lived to tell the tale. The jury, the lawyers, the entire town wanted to hear his voice. Would he condemn his daughter or forgive her? When Terry finally took the stand, the courtroom fell silent. He looked at Erin, the daughter who had once called him daddy, and then turned to the jury. His words would decide not just her sentence, but her legacy. What he said next would leave everyone in shock. The courtroom was still. The only sound was the shuffling of papers as Terry Caffey, bandaged, scarred, and limping, made his way to the witness stand. Every eye was on him. This was the man who had lost his wife, Penny, and 2 young sons, Bubba and Tyler. This was the man who had survived 13 stab wounds and fire. And this was the man whose daughter sat in the defendant's chair, accused of orchestrating it all. The prosecutor asked the question everyone had been waiting for. Mr. Caffey, do you believe your daughter Erin should be held responsible for this crime? The room braced for anger, for condemnation. Instead, Terry's voice came out soft, trembling. I don't blame Erin. I forgive her. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The jurors exchanged stunned glances. Reporters scribbled furiously. Erin's head snapped up, her tear-streaked face twisted in shock. Terry went on, explaining that he believed Erin had been manipulated, that the devil had preyed on her weaknesses, that Charlie and his friends had twisted her mind. I lost my family that night, he said, his voice breaking. But I will not lose my daughter too. Forgiveness is the only way I can live. It was an extraordinary moment. A father who had every reason to hate chose love instead. But forgiveness didn't erase the facts. The prosecution laid out the text messages where Erin hinted at wanting her parents dead. They played recordings where Charlie admitted that Erin encouraged the plan. They called witnesses who testified that Erin had joked about wishing her family would just go away. The jury's task was impossible. How do you judge a 16-year-old girl, raised in the church, adored by her community, who helped destroy her own family? After hours of deliberation, the verdict came. Erin Caffey was not going to walk free. Though spared the death penalty because of her age, she was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences, plus 25 years, without the possibility of parole until 2048. She would be nearly 60 years old before she had another chance at freedom. Charlie Wilkinson, her boyfriend, received a life sentence. Charles Wade, who fired the fatal shots, was also sentenced to life. Bobby Gale Johnson, who drove the getaway car, received 40 years. The town of Alba exhaled, but the wounds remained. Terry Caffey, however, did not stop. In a move that shocked even those closest to him, he began preaching publicly about forgiveness, even visiting Erin in prison. He wrote a book about the tragedy, urging people to understand the dangers of misplaced love, teenage obsession, and spiritual warfare. He claimed that God had spared him so he could save his daughter's soul. But the public was divided. Some praised Terry for his faith and strength. Others called him delusional, unable to face the reality that his daughter had betrayed him. Years later, when Erin began speaking out from prison, giving interviews and sharing her side of the story, people started asking a new question. Was Erin truly a manipulated victim, or had she been the silent architect of the Caffey family massacre all along? The answer, hidden in Erin's own words, would change everything. For years after the sentencing, Erin Caffey remained silent. To the world, she was the pastor's daughter turned mastermind murderer, a teenage girl who had led her boyfriend and his friends into her home, destroying an entire family in one night. But then, behind prison walls, Erin finally began to talk. From prison, Erin wrote letters to Terry, her father. In them, she begged for forgiveness, swore she loved her family, and promised she wasn't the monster people thought she was. Terry, ever steadfast in his faith, continued to visit her, often telling reporters, "The world sees a murderer. I see my daughter who lost her way." Aaron's story is one that still shocks the world today, a reminder of how fragile trust and family bonds can be. But hers isn't the only case where teenage choices led to unthinkable tragedy. There are countless more stories, just as chilling, waiting to be uncovered. She sat in the courtroom calm, composed, almost smug, acting as if she had it all figured out, as if freedom was just around the corner, like she could simply walk out and leave the past behind. She truly believed she was untouchable. But then, the video played, and everything changed. The room fell into silence. Every pair of eyes locked on the screen. What they saw wasn't speculation, wasn't rumor. It was the undeniable truth. Two young men, their lives violently cut short, their final moments captured in cold, hard detail. No lies could hide it. No tears, no excuses, no performance could cover up what the evidence revealed. She tried, of course, crying, playing the victim, twisting the story to make herself seem innocent. But it didn't matter anymore. The truth was right there, inescapable. And in that instant she knew there would be no walking out of that courtroom. Not after what they saw. Not after what she did. This is the chilling case of Mackenzie Shirilla, the teenage driver whose deadly decision shattered lives and left a community reeling. On the surface, she was like any other suburban teen, smiling in selfies, dancing on TikTok, cruising through quiet Ohio streets in her silver Toyota Camry. But one early morning, behind the wheel, she made a choice investigators would later call cold, calculated, and deliberate. It wasn't just a crash. It was devastation, a scene so violent it looked like something from a horror film. And when investigators pulled the black box from her car, the truth stunned everyone. What really happened that night? And why did she do it? Did a frightened teen lose control? Or did she mean to end everything? Mackenzie, just 17, seemed to live the typical life of a Strongsville high school senior, balancing classes, fashion, and fun. Online, she was bubbly, confident, and always ready for the camera. But beneath the filters was a turbulent relationship with her boyfriend, 20-year-old Dominic Russo. He was street smart, good-looking, always surrounded by friends. Their relationship wasn't just rocky, it was explosive. And by July 2022, that volatility reached its breaking point. In the early hours of July 31st, 2022, around 5:30 a.m., surveillance footage captured something strange. A silver Toyota Camry speeding through a deserted industrial area of Strongsville, far from neighborhoods, far from safety. Behind the wheel, Mackenzie. In the passenger seat, Dominic. In the back, their friend, 19-year-old Devon Flanagan. The footage showed Mackenzie driving slowly down Alameda Drive, circling back, and then suddenly flooring the accelerator. Within seconds, the Camry slammed into the brick wall of a vacant warehouse at nearly 100 miles per hour. The impact was catastrophic. The car folded like paper. First responders rushed to the scene, but Dominic and Devon were gone, pronounced dead where they lay. Paramedics found Mackenzie unconscious, critical but alive. Against all odds, she walked away from the wreck that killed two young men. And that's when the questions began. At first glance, it looked like a tragic teen accident, reckless driving, a young girl who lost control behind the wheel. But investigators noticed something odd. There were no skid marks, no signs of braking, and while the car was mangled beyond recognition, Mackenzie's injuries were surprisingly minor, serious enough for hospitalization, but far from life-threatening. She was alert, conscious, and very much alive. Then came the discovery that changed everything. Police pulled the vehicle's event data recorder, the car's black box. What it revealed turned the case upside down. The data showed that Mackenzie had floored the accelerator, hitting 100 miles per hour, and never once touched the brakes. This wasn't a loss of control. It wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. But why? Was this murder or a suicide attempt gone wrong? To answer that, prosecutors dug deeper into her texts, her social media, and the accounts of people who knew her best. A disturbing pattern began to emerge. Mackenzie and Dominic were constantly fighting. Friends described their relationship as toxic, dramatic, and consuming. And in the weeks leading up to the crash, Mackenzie had allegedly made chilling threats, hinting that if she couldn't have Dominic, she would rather destroy everything. One former friend later testified that Mackenzie had openly admitted her intentions. She said she would crash the car to end everything, and she wasn't speaking in metaphors. She meant it, literally. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered surveillance footage that sent a chill through the case. Just days before the fatal crash, cameras caught Mackenzie driving that same deserted stretch of road, following the very same path. To authorities, it looked less like coincidence and more like a rehearsal, a dry run, proof that this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment outburst, but a calculated plan. That footage became a cornerstone of the prosecution's case, painting a picture of intention rather than accident, a disturbing breadcrumb trail leading straight to tragedy. But perhaps the most gut-wrenching moment came not in a courtroom nor on a screen, but at the doorstep of Dominic Russo's mother. When police arrived at her home to deliver the news, she knew before they even spoke. The look on their faces said everything. The moment she heard her son's name, her legs gave out. She collapsed in grief, sobbing and screaming in disbelief, her cries carrying through the neighborhood. In that instant, the weight of the unimaginable crashed down, not just on her family, but on an entire community that would never be the same again. In August 2023, 19-year-old Mackenzie Sherilla stood trial facing a string of serious charges, including aggravated homicide and endangering the life of a minor. Prosecutors emphasized that Devon, only 19 years old, had no part in her conflicts with Dominic, yet he was caught in the path of destruction. Their argument was clear. Mackenzie had weaponized her car, turning it into a 3,500-pound missile of death. Her defense painted a different picture. They claimed Mackenzie had suffered brain trauma, memory loss, and couldn't recall anything about that morning. For a moment, it almost sounded convincing. Almost. But then the evidence spoke louder than words. Investigators revealed that in the weeks before the crash, Mackenzie had allegedly told Dominic during a heated fight that she would crash the car. What once seemed like teenage drama suddenly looked like a chilling prophecy. Next came surveillance footage, Mackenzie driving the same road just days before the tragedy, what prosecutors called a test run. And finally, the most damning evidence of all, the crash video itself. No hesitation, no braking, no attempt to turn away, just acceleration into a brick wall at 100 miles per hour. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Mackenzie's claims of confusion and memory loss dissolved against the cold precision of the facts. The black box confirmed it. Witnesses confirmed it. Her own words confirmed it. The story the defense hoped would free her completely collapsed. Because this was a bench trial, her fate lay in the hands of one person, Judge Nancy Margaret Russo. On August 14, 2023, the verdict came down. Guilty. On every count. Russo declared Mackenzie's act was not an accident, not a medical emergency, but a deliberate mission of death. She called Mackenzie literal hell on wheels, saying she executed her mission with precision. Guilty on 12 counts: murder, aggravated vehicular homicide, felonious assault, drug possession, criminal tools. Her sentence: life concurrent with parole eligibility after 15 years. Her license gone for life.
This trial is a culmination of decisions made by one person, the defendant. Those decisions have forever altered the futures of 3 families, and of you also, Mackenzie. And your decisions forever robbed Dominic and Davion of the futures that they had before them. If there is one thing that can be taken away from this case, as painful as it is this: every decision we make is important. Every action we make is important. Regardless of whether the decision is a good one or a bad one, or the actions are good or not, the result is the same. The totality of the evidence clearly demonstrates that Mackenzie Shirilla acted purposely and intentionally in the early morning hours of July 31st, 2022, and her purpose was to kill Dominic Russo and Davion Flanagan. No reasonable fact finder could view the totality of this evidence in this case and come to any other conclusion. Her actions were controlled, methodical, deliberate, intentional, and purposeful. This was not reckless driving. This was murder. Court renders the following verdicts. Count finds the defendant Mackenzie Shirilla guilty of murder, to wit Davion Flanagan, in violation of Ohio Revised Code Section 2903.02a, as charged in count 2 of the indictment. Count 3, murder. The court, having had count 3 tried to and pursuant to waiver, finds the defendant Mackenzie Shirilla guilty of murder, to wit Dominic Russo, in violation of Ohio Revised Code Section 2903.02b, as charged in count 3. Count 4, murder. The court, having had count 4 tried to and pursuant to waiver, finds the defendant Mackenzie Shirilla guilty of murder, to wit Dominic Russo, in violation of Ohio Revised Code Section 2903.02b, as charged in count 4.
This trial, the judge said, is the culmination of decisions made by one person, the defendant. Those decisions forever changed the lives of 3 families, and they forever robbed Dominic and Devon of the futures they should have had. Behind the verdict lay another truth. Her parents insist she had a medical event that erased her memory. Could that be reality or denial? By 2025, Mackenzie's parents went public. Their lawyer filed appeals and post-conviction relief petitions. 2 pieces of new evidence: health data suggesting a possible medical episode, and original text messages from Dominic that might show he instigated fights. They argue no proof shows she intended to kill. Appeals were denied. The Ohio Supreme Court affirmed the convictions. Judges ruled there was ample evidence, no procedural error notable. The case wasn't just closed, it was sealed. If she truly blacked out, then legal and moral, everything changes. But will that claim ever open the door again?
I'm not Davion. I'm so deeply sorry.
I hope one day you can see I would never let this happen or do it on purpose. I wish I could remember what happened. I'm just so sorry. I'm heartbroken. I love Dom and Davion. We were all friends and Dom was my soulmate. I wish I could take all your pain away. And I'm so sorry. And to my family, thank you for the support and all the love you guys give. Thank you for fighting with me. I love you all so much.
As soon as I come through, I let that chopper off. Pow! Pow! That's not a chopper sound. I'm sorry. As soon as I come through, I kill everybody. We killing one person. No, we kill everybody. When I'm in the club, I make it rain. I'm gonna pick that up. No, we not.
A 16-year-old was taken into custody at Galveston County Juvenile Detention Center after she is believed to have shot and killed her mother, according to police. It was a Thursday night in Galveston, Texas. On Avenue Q, the air was still. Families were settling in for the evening. Children were finishing their dinners, and neighbors were pulling their curtains closed. It was the kind of night where nothing unusual seemed possible. But just before 8 p.m., everything changed. Police dispatchers received a frantic call. A shooting had been reported at a home in the 5100 block of Avenue Q. Within minutes, officers from the Galveston Police Department rushed to the scene. Inside the home, they found 34-year-old Tiamoya Moore, a mother, lying critically wounded from gunshot injuries. She was quickly transported to UTMB Hospital, but despite doctors' efforts, she did not survive. The shock was immediate. Neighbors later described Moore as a kind, spiritual woman, a mother deeply devoted to her children. She had worked hard to rebuild her life, even sharing openly about her sobriety journey on social media. To the outside world, she was an example of strength and resilience. But what stunned the community most was not just her death. It was who police identified as the suspect. Authorities revealed that the alleged shooter was Moore's own 16-year-old daughter. According to police, after the shooting, the teenager briefly left the house, but then returned. Officers arrested her at the scene without incident. She was taken into custody, leaving neighbors and loved ones struggling to process how something so violent could erupt inside what had seemed like a normal family home. As word spread, the questions grew louder. Why would a daughter turn a gun on her own mother? Were there hidden struggles inside the Moore household that no one saw? And what would the justice system do with a suspect so young? For now, officials have not released details about a motive. The investigation is still unfolding, and court proceedings are only just beginning. What's clear is that this tragedy has left a wound in the Galveston community and raised haunting questions about what really happened behind closed doors on Avenue Q that night. Alicia says she and Tiamoya have known each other since they were in diapers, and they were more like family and sisters. "I just can't believe she's gone," said Alicia. "I was devastated, didn't want to believe it in disbelief, confused in shock hurt. Tia would give you the shirt off of her back. Tia loved her kids. She would do anything for her kids. She was very spiritual, very into God, changed her life around for God," said Alicia. "I just want to know what really happened. Like, what caused for that to get to this point to where you had to take your own mama's life?" And as investigators begin piecing together the final hours of Tiamoya Moore's life, the truth they uncover may be darker and more complicated than anyone expected. It was supposed to be a normal Saturday morning in Waukesha, Wisconsin, a quiet suburban town where children played freely, where parents trusted their kids to ride bikes down tree-lined streets, and where neighbors waved across their lawns. But on May 31st, 2014, that calm was shattered forever. In the woods at the edge of town, a 12-year-old girl stumbled from the trees, bleeding from 19 stab wounds, gasping for air, and begging for help. A passing cyclist saw her collapse on the side of the road, her body weak, her voice faint, but her will to live stronger than anyone could have imagined. This wasn't a random attack by strangers. This wasn't gang violence or a tragic accident. Her attackers were not adults. They weren't even teenagers. They were her best friends, 2 other 12-year-old girls. And when the police caught them, the reason behind the crime left even the most hardened detectives speechless. These children weren't chasing money, revenge, or power. They claimed they were trying to appease a creature from the internet, a faceless, shadowy figure known only as Slender Man. What unfolded next would become one of the most shocking and haunting juvenile crime cases in modern American history. It raised terrifying questions about friendship, mental illness, the power of the internet, and how far children can go when they believe in something unreal, but deadly. This is the true story of Morgan Geyser and Anissa Weier, the case that blurred the line between childhood fantasy and chilling reality. But before we unravel how 2 young girls carried out one of the most infamous attacks in the name of a fictional monster, make sure you're subscribed to Crime Vault, where we uncover the darkest true crime cases that leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. Trust me, you're going to want to stay until the end, because the twists in this story will leave you speechless. Morgan Geyser grew up in Waukesha, Wisconsin, the only child of a loving but somewhat unusual household. Her parents, though supportive, had quirks that set them apart from the typical suburban family. Morgan herself was bright, creative, and imaginative, but classmates often described her as different, socially awkward, sometimes withdrawn, and prone to immersing herself in fantasy. She was a kind of girl who preferred living in her own world rather than blending into the one around her. Doctors later revealed that Morgan struggled with undiagnosed early-onset schizophrenia. Even as a child, she heard voices, experienced hallucinations, and believed in things others dismissed as impossible. But at just 12 years old, no one had connected the dots. To her peers and teachers, she was simply eccentric. Anissa Weier, on the other hand, came from a more fractured background. Her parents were divorced, and Anissa often felt caught between 2 households. At school, she was described as quiet, lonely, and desperate to fit in. Unlike Morgan, who could at least retreat into her imagination, Anissa carried the weight of isolation heavily. She didn't have many close friends until she met Morgan. The 2 girls clicked instantly. Both outsiders, both misunderstood, both craving connection. They bonded over fantasy, internet stories, and their shared love for the eerie corners of online culture. And it wasn't long before they stumbled upon something that would change their lives forever: Slender Man. Slender Man wasn't real. He was a creation born on an internet forum called Something Awful back in 2009, designed for a Photoshop contest. The character, tall, faceless, dressed in a black suit with unnaturally long arms, was meant to haunt readers in short horror stories called creepypastas. But for impressionable kids like Morgan and Anissa, Slender Man became more than just a story. He became a presence. The 2 began spending hours consuming Slender Man lore, reading posts, watching videos, and immersing themselves in his mythology. For them, it wasn't just a scary story, it was a reality. They convinced themselves that Slender Man lived in a mansion deep in the Nicolet National Forest of Wisconsin. And more disturbingly, they began to believe that if they didn't prove their loyalty to him, he would come after their families. This shared delusion deepened their bond. What started as friendship morphed into something darker, a partnership built not on typical middle school secrets and sleepovers, but on paranoia, fear, and obsession. By the end of 2013, both girls believed they had a mission. They needed to become proxies, followers who served Slender Man. And to do that, they told themselves they had to make a sacrifice, a human sacrifice. And they already knew who their victim would be. Peyton Isabella Lutner, known to friends and family as Bella, was everything Morgan and Anissa were not. Outgoing, friendly, and full of warmth, Bella had a natural charisma that drew people in. She and Morgan became friends in the 4th grade, and though their personalities were different, Bella had a soft spot for Morgan's quirks. She defended her against bullies, included her when others didn't, and often acted as the bridge between Morgan and the rest of the class. But Bella didn't know the storm brewing beneath her friend's surface. She had no idea that her kindness, her loyalty, and her trust would make her the chosen target of a nightmare. As Morgan and Anissa's obsession with Slender Man deepened, Bella became the name whispered in their secret conversations. The plan wasn't formed overnight. It grew gradually, piece by piece, over months of disturbing discussions. At first, it was an idea that seemed more like fantasy. What if we killed Bella to prove ourselves to Slender Man? But as weeks passed, the fantasy hardened into intent. Police documents later revealed chilling details. The girls had researched methods of killing. They searched online for terms like how to kill someone without them noticing, and quickest way to commit murder. They read about knives, pressure points, and the human body's vulnerabilities. These weren't the searches of children playing pretend. They were the marks of two 12-year-olds descending into delusion. Their plan took shape in stages. First, they would invite Bella to a sleepover. Everything would seem normal, just 3 friends celebrating a birthday, staying up late, talking, and playing games. Then, the next day, they would lure her into the woods at a local park, far from prying eyes. And that's where they would strike. But what's most unsettling is how methodical their plotting became. In their journals, later recovered by police, Morgan and Anissa wrote about the crime with chilling detachment. They debated the best time to attack. Should it be in the bathroom at Morgan's house while Bella slept, or in the park the following morning? They even discussed wearing masks, gloves, and hiding the body. And yet, in between these disturbing entries, they still wrote about the everyday things 12-year-olds cared about. Favorite songs, classmates, silly doodles. It was a chilling juxtaposition. Ordinary childhood scrawls laced with the seeds of murder. By May 2014, the plan was set. Bella trusted Morgan completely, and Anissa, though less close to her, seemed harmless enough. When Morgan invited Bella to a sleepover for her birthday, Bella said yes without hesitation. To her, it was just another night with friends. To Morgan and Anissa, it was the first step toward becoming proxies of Slender Man. The night of May 30th, 2014, began like any other sleepover. Pizza, games, playing with toys. At one point, the girls even roller skated around the basement, laughing and joking like normal kids. To Bella, everything felt safe. To Morgan and Anissa, it was cover. But sometime that night, when the other two believed Bella had drifted to sleep, Morgan picked up a knife. The first chance had come, yet nerves overcame her, and the attack didn't happen. Anissa whispered to her to wait until the morning, and so they did. Bella woke the next day with no suspicion of the darkness surrounding her. She got dressed, ate breakfast, and followed her friends out the door. They told her they wanted to go to the park. She agreed, smiling. It was the kind of thing best friends did on a Saturday morning. She had no idea she was walking straight into an ambush. Saturday, May 31st, 2014. The morning sun rose gently over Waukesha, Wisconsin. It should have been an ordinary day for 3 middle school girls. Instead, it became the day that shook the entire nation. Morgan, Anissa, and Bella left the house together, telling Morgan's mother they wanted to play at David's Park, a wooded area nearby. To an outsider, it looked like 3 friends enjoying a weekend adventure. But inside the minds of Morgan and Anissa, the plan was crystal clear. They carried with them a kitchen knife, a blade nearly 5 inches long, hidden in Morgan's bag. This wasn't some impulsive moment. This was premeditated, rehearsed, and chillingly deliberate. At first, they suggested going to the park's bathroom. Their plan? To pin Bella against the wall and kill her there. But as soon as they stepped inside, fear gripped them. The space was too small, too close, too risky. People could hear. Bella noticed nothing, brushing it off as just part of the morning wanderings. The girls left the bathroom and walked deeper into the woods. That's when Anissa whispered to Bella, "Go lie down, it'll make you less hurt." Confused, Bella laughed nervously, but she trusted her friends. She laid on the grass, staring up at the blue Wisconsin sky. And then, in a moment that would scar her forever, Morgan climbed on top of her. She pulled out the knife. What followed was brutality that seemed unimaginable for children so young. Bella was stabbed 19 times. The blade punctured her arms, her legs, her torso. 2 wounds came frighteningly close to her heart and major arteries. Any deeper, and she would not have survived. As Bella screamed and fought, begging her friends to stop, the woods echoed with desperation. Yet Morgan and Anissa didn't stop. When it was over, Bella lay bleeding on the forest floor, her white shirt soaked in red. Morgan and Anissa told her they'd go get help, but that was a lie. Instead, they left her there, assuming she would die. But Bella wasn't finished. With every ounce of strength left in her small body, she dragged herself, inch by painful inch, through the forest. 19 stab wounds, blood loss, dizziness. But she refused to let it be the end. Somehow, miraculously, she crawled out of the trees and onto a bike path. It was there that a passing cyclist saw her. A man named Greg Steinberg spotted Bella, bloodied and collapsing, and called 911. His voice shook as he told dispatchers, "There's a girl, she's been stabbed. She needs help now." Paramedics rushed to the scene. Bella was pale, barely conscious, but alive. They stabilized her, applied pressure to her wounds, and raced her to the hospital. Surgeons later described her survival as nothing short of a miracle. 2 of the stab wounds missed her heart and major artery by less than a millimeter. Meanwhile, Morgan and Anissa were not at the hospital. They weren't waiting for updates. They were on the run. The 2 12-year-olds, still carrying the knife, walked for miles along highways and back roads. Their destination? Nicolet National Forest, more than 200 miles away. Why? Because they believed Slender Man lived there. They thought if they could find him, they would be welcomed as his proxies and protected forever. For hours, they wandered, convinced their mission had been successful, convinced Bella was dead, convinced Slender Man was waiting for them. But by that time, Bella was fighting for her life in surgery, and the police were already searching for the two girls. It didn't take long for police to find them. Just hours after the stabbing, Waukesha authorities issued an alert for the missing 12-year-old girls. Officers canvassed the area, checking wooded trails and nearby highways. By late afternoon, a police officer spotted two figures walking near Interstate 94, their backpacks slung over their shoulders. It was Morgan Geyser and Anissa Wire. The girls looked exhausted, their clothes dirty from wandering the woods. In Morgan's backpack was the weapon, a 5-inch kitchen knife, its blade still carrying traces of Bella's blood. The arrest was swift. But what shocked investigators wasn't just that two preteens had carried out a nearly fatal stabbing. It was how calm they were about it. Anissa, trembling but cooperative, told officers, "We were trying to find Slender Man." Morgan? She seemed almost detached, even cheerful, as if she didn't fully grasp the gravity of what had happened. At the Waukesha Police Department, the interrogation rooms became the stage for one of the most haunting juvenile cases in modern American history. Investigators separated the girls. Each was placed in a stark room, with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, cameras recording their every move. Anissa broke first. In a soft, nervous voice, she confessed the plan had been in motion for months. She explained Slender Man, how they discovered him on the website Creepypasta, how they believed he was real, and how he could hurt their families if they didn't obey. "We had to do it," she said. "If we didn't, Slender Man would kill our families." She insisted she hadn't stabbed Bella, but admitted she had encouraged Morgan, pressured her, and guided the plan. Then came Morgan's interview. To the detective's surprise, Morgan spoke with little emotion, almost as if she were describing a normal day at school. She admitted she was the one who stabbed Bella. She even described the sound the knife made as it went into Bella's body. At one point, she giggled, not out of cruelty, but out of something far more unsettling, a detachment from reality. When asked why she did it, her answer was chilling. It was necessary. Slender Man wanted it. We had to prove ourselves. The detectives leaned in, confused and horrified. They pushed, asking if she really believed this figure was real. Morgan nodded. "He watches us. He lives in Nicolet National Forest. We had to go to him." For investigators, it became clear this wasn't just about a crime. This was about two children whose grip on reality had been warped by delusion and fear. Back at the hospital, Bella lay in critical condition. Surgeons worked tirelessly, and against all odds, she survived. When detectives later visited her, she was able to whisper enough to identify her attackers, Morgan and Anissa, her best friends. The evidence was undeniable. Bella's testimony, the knife, the confessions. The case that began as a bizarre mystery quickly solidified into something more concrete, attempted murder. But even as prosecutors prepared charges, a bigger question loomed. Were Morgan and Anissa truly evil? Or were they sick, lost in a dangerous fantasy they believed was real? And then another twist. Wisconsin law required children as young as 10 to be tried as adults in serious felony cases, including attempted murder. That meant two 12-year-old girls were now facing adult court, staring down decades in prison. The trial of Morgan Geyser and Anissa Weier unfolded like no other. By now, the facts were undisputed. Bella had been stabbed 19 times, and both girls had confessed. The real battle was over why they did it, and whether they could be held fully responsible. The world watched as two childhood friends, barely out of 6th grade, faced charges of first-degree attempted intentional homicide. In Wisconsin, that was an adult felony. A conviction could mean decades behind bars. The courtroom brimmed with tension when the final arguments began. The prosecution painted the girls as dangerous. They reminded the court of the careful planning, the deliberate lure into the woods, and the repeated stabbing. They argued that Morgan and Anissa knew right from wrong. They hid the knife. They lied to police at first. They ran from the scene. To prosecutors, that was proof enough. This wasn't just a delusion, it was a crime. The defense, however, clung to the psychiatric evidence. Morgan's schizophrenia, they argued, was so severe that she lived in a fractured reality. Anissa's gullibility made her a follower, not a leader. Both girls, they insisted, needed treatment, not punishment. And then, as the lawyers spoke their final words, the judge prepared to decide the fate of two children who had committed an adult crime. The verdict was a study in contrasts. In 2017, Anissa Weier accepted a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to being a party to attempted second-degree homicide, but her case hinged on her mental state. A jury later found her not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect. Instead of prison, she was sentenced to 25 years in a mental health facility. Her parents wept as the judge explained. Anissa was not a hardened criminal, but a fragile mind caught in the shadow of a darker influence. For Morgan Geyser, the outcome was harsher. She pleaded guilty to attempted first-degree homicide, but also claimed insanity. Unlike Anissa, her diagnosis of schizophrenia was undeniable and well documented. In 2018, the judge ruled she too was not guilty by reason of mental disease. But because of the severity of her illness and her central role in the stabbing, Morgan was sentenced to 40 years in a secure psychiatric institution. Two lives, forever bound together in a crime that shook America, received different but equally heavy fates. When the sentences were read, silence filled the courtroom. On one side, Bella's family wrestled with relief that justice had been served, but also with the bitter truth that their daughter's life would never be the same. On the other, the families of Morgan and Anissa broke down. Their daughters were alive, but gone, locked away, their futures rewritten. And then came Bella herself, the survivor. Against all odds, she not only lived but thrived. She returned to school, pursued her passions, and eventually spoke publicly about resilience and forgiveness. But the scars, physical and emotional, remained as daily reminders of the nightmare she endured. This case split public opinion. Some saw the verdicts as merciful, a recognition that mental illness had driven the crime. Others saw injustice, that two nearly killers avoided prison because of legal technicalities. But everyone agreed on one thing. The Slender Man case wasn't just about a meme. It was about the fragile minds of children, the dangers of untreated mental illness, and the blurry line between fantasy and reality in the digital age. Yet, even after sentencing, questions lingered. Could this have been prevented if warning signs had been taken more seriously? Could treatment, education, or parental intervention have stopped the delusion before it turned violent? And most hauntingly, what would become of Morgan and Anissa after decades inside psychiatric walls? Would they heal, or would the shadow of Slender Man follow them forever? The verdicts were handed down. Morgan Geyser and Anissa Weier would not spend their lives in prison, but instead behind the walls of psychiatric institutions. Yet the story of the Slender Man stabbing didn't end inside that courtroom. It echoed far beyond, reshaping lives, families, and even the internet itself. For Bella, the survivor, recovery was both physical and emotional. Doctors performed multiple surgeries to repair the damage caused by the 19 stab wounds. Each scar carried a memory of the woods, of betrayal, of pain that no child should ever endure. Yet Bella's resilience became a symbol of hope. She went back to school, gradually reclaiming her independence. Friends and teachers described her as strong, determined, and wise beyond her years. But even as she smiled, the trauma lingered. Bella later admitted she struggled with anxiety and trust issues. After all, the girls who nearly ended her life weren't strangers. They were her best friends. Still, Bella's story became one of survival, a reminder that even in the darkest tragedies, light can break through. For Anissa Weier, the years after sentencing were complex. She entered a mental health facility at just 15 years old. Isolated from her peers, she spent her teenage years in treatment, therapy, and under constant observation. Reports from psychologists described her as highly suggestible, prone to fantasy, and terrified of abandonment. Yet, as the years passed, Anissa showed progress. In 2021, after nearly 7 years of confinement, she petitioned for release. She argued she was no longer a threat to society and had learned to manage her mental health. Against public outcry, the court agreed, granting her conditional release into community supervision with strict monitoring. Some saw this as a second chance. Others feared history might repeat itself. For Morgan Geyser, the path was even heavier. Diagnosed with schizophrenia, her delusions were more severe and persistent. Doctors reported she often spoke of voices, paranoia, and visions. Unlike Anissa, Morgan's recovery was slower, more complicated. In the courtroom, she once apologized to Bella and her family, her words laced with both sorrow and confusion. "I never meant for this to happen. I don't know why." Morgan remained confined to a psychiatric facility, with her 40-year sentence stretching well into adulthood. Her future remained uncertain. Would she ever be stable enough to re-enter society, or would she live her life within hospital walls? The families of all 3 girls carried wounds of their own. Bella's parents endured the nightmare of almost losing their daughter. Morgan's and Anissa's families faced guilt, shame, and scrutiny, accused by some of not noticing the warning signs. Interviews later revealed their heartbreak, loving their daughters, but haunted by what they had done. It was a tragedy that did not stop at the woods. It rippled outward, forever changing 3 families who once shared birthday parties and school dances. Beyond the personal, the cultural impact was enormous. The Slender Man stabbing forced America to confront uncomfortable truths about childhood, the internet, and mental health. Parents began asking new questions. How much influence do online myths have on children? Can young minds distinguish between fantasy and reality in the digital age? Are schools, doctors, and families doing enough to catch early signs of mental illness? Even the creator of Slender Man, Eric Knudsen, was shaken. What started as a fictional horror meme on the internet had spiraled into real-world violence. Knudsen expressed sorrow for the tragedy, though he could not have foreseen his creation fueling such darkness. The internet itself came under scrutiny. Sites that hosted creepypasta stories faced backlash. Psychologists warned of the dangers of digital folklore on impressionable children. The case became a cautionary tale. Stories may be fictional, but their impact on vulnerable minds can be devastatingly real. In schools and communities, the stories sparked new conversations about mental health. Educators began emphasizing early detection, counseling, and digital literacy. Parents were urged to talk openly with their children about what they see online. Lawmakers debated reforms to better balance juvenile justice with psychiatric treatment. The Slender Man stabbing wasn't just a crime, it was a wake-up call. And yet, more than a decade later, the case still leaves unanswered questions. Could anyone have stopped it before it happened? Could Morgan's schizophrenia have been diagnosed earlier? Could Anissa's parents have recognized her dangerous dependency on fantasy? And what about Bella? What does forgiveness look like when the people who hurt you were the people you trusted most? The story of Morgan Geyser and Anissa Weier is not only about a crime, it is about the fragile line between innocence and horror, between childhood play and deadly obsession. It is a story of survival, of mental illness, of friendship turned fatal. But perhaps the most chilling truth is this: the shadows that led 3 girls into the woods that day are not gone. They linger in our communities, on our screens, in the silent struggles of children who feel unseen. It's 1 a.m. on a frigid February night in Manheim Township, Pennsylvania. A teenage girl, just 14 years old, calls 911. Her voice trembles, veering between hysteria and something colder. Then, for words that will shock everyone, "I stabbed my sister." Pause, linger there. Then silence. A first responder's nightmare. A once ordinary family home, now a crime scene. And at the center, a child accused of the unthinkable. Stick with me, don't click away, because what comes after will challenge everything you thought you knew about youth, mental health, justice, and where true accountability lies. Subscribe now and stay until the end, because this story isn't just another crime. It's a lens into our failing systems, our darkest impulses, and a twist that will leave you breathless. February 22nd, 2021. Manheim Township, suburban calm shattered. First responders arrive at the Miller family's ranch-style home. Snow blankets the driveway, but it's stained. There are red patches near the front, and a young girl, Claire Elena Miller, 14, stands outside, shaking, pants soaked. She splashes snow on her hands, as if to wash away more than just blood. In her voice, "I stabbed my sister." Inside, Helen Miller, 19, lying in bed with cerebral palsy in her wheelchair. She's been mysteriously and brutally stabbed in the neck. A pillow lies over her face, a single knife planted in the wound. Life drains from her while her parents sleep upstairs, unaware. From the outside, this looks like a random act of violence. But the deeper you look, the more you realize there's nothing random here. What drove a 14-year-old to take the life of her own sister? And what had been swirling beneath the surface? In the court of public opinion, there's an obsession with fame and with blaming TikTok. Claire had a following, about 21.9K fans. She posted lip-sync videos, anime content, and casual glimpses into daily life, occasionally with her sister visible in the background. The speculation exploded. Did she kill for clout? A superficial excuse if you ask anyone who studied teenage psychology. Behind the feed was a child, lonely, depressed, battling a psychotic disorder. The day after the killing, police documents reveal she'd been having both suicidal and homicidal thoughts. Imagine a teenager waking each day with swirling dark impulses, cut off from real-world affection, seeking solace and validation on a screen. Did the algorithm feed her despair? Or was it reaching into her pre-existing wounds? We know she posted, but did the screen reflect the storm or deepen it? Neighbors describe a quiet street, steady routines, school trips, holidays. The Millers, Mark and Marie, loved both daughters. But Helen, needing more care due to cerebral palsy, inevitably received more attention, not out of favoritism, but out of necessity. Could that have bred resentment? Court filings and a witness, an unnamed person who spoke to Claire before police arrived, noted her suicidal and homicidal thoughts, but not attention-seeking. A lawyer for Claire later painted a broader picture. Mental health crises among youth, worsened by pandemic isolation, anxiety, disrupted routines, and uncertainty. Some of our best and brightest children are fighting demons, he said, calling for vigilance. A defense motion sought juvenile court, where the focus is rehabilitation until age 21, not prison. Her parents supported it. Horrific as it sounds, they didn't want to lose Claire too. A judge had to decide whether this girl would be tried as an adult, a choice that could mean decades in prison or a chance at healing. In September 2024, Judge David Workman ruled, Claire must remain in adult court. Pennsylvania law treats homicide as an adult crime, but courts can transfer under rare circumstances. Her mental health challenges didn't tip the scale. Months later, she pleaded guilty, but mentally ill to third-degree murder. Not the same as an insanity plea, but acknowledging she lacked full capacity at the time. Judge Jeffrey Wright delivered the sentence, 12.5 to 40 years in prison. A child once, but now a convict, in a system ill-prepared for her complexity. Upon sentencing, her mental health and rehabilitation became the focus. Her attorney said she'd shown improvement. The DA insisted it balanced accountability, her age, mental condition, and society safety. A teenager locked in a prison cell, serving a sentence meant to outlast her own youth. But is justice served, or is the system simply failing them both? Consider the parents. They lost one daughter to death and the other to incarceration. As the judge observed, the courtroom must hold grief and hope samely for both Helen and Claire. On Reddit, comments echo our struggle to understand. Some insisted she was sane. She was therefore aware of what she was doing. Others saw the cost of mental illness and the pain of families shamed even in grief. One commenter captured it pointedly. The mom's plea broke my heart. We love both of them. I know Claire did not mean to do this. We lost Helen And we don't want to lose Claire too. Here lies the social justice dimension. Our failure to detect mental illness, to support vulnerable youth, and our impulse to punish rather than heal. In 2021, a 14-year-old with a psychotic disorder killed her sister. 2 years later, she's locked behind bars. No second chance in sight. Justice systems are meant to protect. But whom do they protect when the accused is still a child in torment? Let's pull back. Claire's story isn't just her own. It's a warning. When youth face mental illness, isolation, online pressure, do we intervene or scroll past? When a family breaks in unimaginable ways, where's the line between justice and revenge? Here's the twist. While she's imprisoned, the debate rages on. Could a juvenile court recovery have been possible? Did the guilty but mentally ill plea balance compassion and consequence? Or did it let a system off the hook? Face the possibility. Maybe there is no tidy answer. Maybe the real crime is our collective negligence. But the story isn't over. What happened inside the prison walls? Does Claire truly receive treatment or become lost in the system? Can she heal? Will she ever face the world again? The clang of a steel door echoes. Concrete walls. A bed no wider than her childhood desk. This is Claire's new reality. Pennsylvania's correctional system. She's not even old enough to drive, but she's dressed in prison blues, her hair tied back, her TikTok dances replaced by therapy worksheets. She is separated from her peers, locked away among women decades older. Some are mothers, some grandmothers, some violent, others broken by addiction. Claire, once a child of suburban quiet, is thrust into a world she cannot fully comprehend. The prison staff try to shield her, placing her in protective custody. Yet whispers follow. That's the kid who killed her sister. But beneath the whispers lies a question. Is she a danger, or just another casualty of untreated illness? What happens when a teenage mind, already fragile, collides with the machinery of adult punishment? By law, Claire's plea, guilty but mentally ill, requires the state to provide psychiatric care. But records show Pennsylvania's prison mental health system is overburdened, underfunded, and plagued by staff shortages. Inmates wait weeks, sometimes months, to see a doctor. Claire is placed on antipsychotic medication. Counselors report mixed progress. Some days she's calmer, reflective, even remorseful. Other days she spirals, scratching her arms, muttering about the voices. Experts argue her case reveals the cracks in America's approach. Prisons become warehouses for the mentally ill. According to Bureau of Justice data, nearly 2/3 of incarcerated youth with violent offenses suffer from a mental disorder. Yet rehabilitation remains the exception, not the rule. Her defense attorney pushes for transfer to a psychiatric facility, but appeals stall. Prosecutors insist prison is the only just punishment. As the legal battle drags on, Claire's condition worsens. But then she does something inside prison that no one expected. Months into her sentence, Claire begins writing letters, hundreds of them, not to friends, not to strangers online, but to her parents. Mom, I'm sorry. I hear Helen's voice sometimes. She says she forgives me, but I don't forgive myself. In another, Dad, I don't want to be here anymore. It feels like they're waiting for me to fail. Please don't forget me. The letters are a lifeline for her parents. Mark and Marie Miller, drowning in grief, torn apart by community whispers, cling to her words. They've already lost Helen. They refuse to abandon Claire. But prosecutors see the letters differently. To them, they are proof she is aware, lucid. A killer who knows exactly what she did. But one letter stands out because it hints at something darker. A secret Claire had never shared before. In a letter written 6 months after sentencing, Claire reveals something chilling. I don't remember the knife. I remember hearing a voice saying she has to go. And then nothing. I woke up and there was blood. Her parents bring this to her attorney, who consults psychiatrists. The diagnosis deepens. Not just depression, not just psychosis, but a potential schizoaffective disorder. If true, this would mean Claire acted in a state where she could not distinguish reality from hallucination. A state that, had it been fully proven in court, might have changed her entire sentence. But prosecutors dismiss it. Too late. She pled guilty. Justice has been served. Was this confession a genuine window into her mind, or a desperate attempt to rewrite history? Outside prison walls, the Miller family lives in a ghost of their old life. Helen's wheelchair still sits in her room. Childhood photos line the hall, but they've become shrines. Marie Miller, the mother, visits Claire weekly. She tells reporters, I know Claire loved Helen. Something inside her broke. We lost one daughter, but I will not let the system erase the other. Mark, the father, struggles more. Friends say he rarely speaks of Claire. For him, the wound is too deep. How do you reconcile that your youngest killed your eldest? In court documents, prosecutors note this fracture, suggesting it reflects Claire's manipulative streak. But psychologists counter. It's evidence of a family trying to survive unimaginable trauma. Then, during one prison visit, Claire says something to her mother that shakes her to the core. Marie sits across from Claire, separated by glass. Claire leans forward, whispering through the phone, Mom, I think someone told me to do it. I think it wasn't me. Marie freezes. What do you mean? Claire's eyes well up. I think the voice wanted Helen gone, not me. This revelation cracks open an unsettling possibility. Was Claire fully in control? Or was she a child swallowed by a psychiatric break that no one caught in time? But here's the twist. Prison records later reveal Claire had stopped taking her medication weeks before that conversation. So was the confession real? Or was it the hallucinations returning with vengeance? Claire's case reverberates far beyond Pennsylvania. Advocacy groups use her story as a rallying cry, a symbol of how America criminalizes children with mental illness instead of treating them. On social media, debates ignite. Some call her a monster. Others see her as a victim of neglect, a child in need of care, not punishment. And some point to TikTok, arguing the culture of constant visibility blurred the line between self-expression and performance of violence. But one truth lingers. A disabled young woman is gone, a 14-year-old is condemned, and a family is shattered. No verdict or sentence can ever make it whole again. And yet, hidden in the legal paperwork, there's a clue suggesting this story isn't over. In 2025, Claire's attorney files a motion, a post-conviction relief petition. He argues that Claire's original trial overlooked critical psychiatric evidence, newly documented auditory hallucinations, that could have led to a verdict of not guilty by reason of insanity. If successful, Claire's sentence could be vacated. She wouldn't walk free, but she might be transferred to a psychiatric hospital instead of prison. Prosecutors push back, warning it could open the floodgates for similar appeals. But behind closed doors, even some prison staff admit, Claire is not like other inmates. She is a child, broken, fragile, fighting voices that only she can hear. Will the courts reopen her case? Or will she spend her entire youth behind bars for a crime committed under the weight of untreated psychosis? A teenager lost in the system, a family still grieving, a justice system unwilling or unable to reconcile punishment with compassion. But the biggest question looms ahead. What really happened in that bedroom? Was it murder? Or was it the act of a child consumed by delusion? And now, with a new legal battle on the horizon, Claire's fate may shift again. I've taken a deep thought about this case, and I asked myself a simple question. What can we do differently so this don't repeat itself in our society? I would be glad to hear your thoughts on these chilling case. Kindly drop your comment in the comment section. You've been watching Crime Vault because every crime has a story, and every story has a hidden truth.